Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, I had a thought today. I was going to go down a different path, and I was like, I don't know, I feel like we do the same thing every day. Feeling the need to do something a little bit different. We've got a Matt LaFleur had an interview with somebody, I forget his name. We still have the Josh Jacobs interview that we haven't gone over, but we've done so much of that recently. As here's what so and so said. Here's a clip of them saying this. Now here's them saying this. It's good stuff, but it doesn't need to be every freaking day. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow. I don't know. I've been mentioning quite a bit recently that I'm, and I don't know how pervasive this is, or if I'm just seeing the 2-3 people that are obsessed with this. There's a lot of concern about cost and how can we pay everyone and who's going to come back, and whether it's, depending on the angle, it might vary a little bit, but overall there still seems to be some kind of an issue with the people that we have, their contracts coming up. Should we just cut everybody? How are we going to get by if we cut everybody? Or, the other side of it is we should just cut everybody. And so I want to just start by going through the Green Bay Packers roster. I want to go through the contracts, not for everybody, we don't necessarily need to talk about Savion Williams, who is just starting his rookie contract. I don't think we need to talk about Janky, who we just picked up at wide receiver. It's not super interesting. But, the guys that we view as participants. Definitely a part of the plan, whether that's just this year or beyond that. And I think what I want to preface this with, because I think it's going to come up, and I've more or less said it before, you cannot win football games with cap space. Okay? That's one of the things I want to preface it with. And so, essentially, what everybody wants, if you want to know how to get the best team, or better yet, I can tell you who has the best team. And by best, I'm not talking about necessarily wins the most games, because that might have to do with the quarterback or the coach you have or whatever. But the highest quality team with the best players on it. It's a very simple equation. It's the team that spends the most money of their cap and the efficiency with which they spend their money. And by efficiency, what I'm doing is I'm taking a metric that doesn't really exist. I think it's over the cap, or I think it's over the cap. It basically does this, taking the contracts and kind of comparing it with PFF grades. However you want to do it. The bottom line is the metric is essentially dollars per talent, per metric of talent. You want to spend as little money on as much talent as you can. You want to underpay the living crap out of everybody. Not necessarily, but I'm just saying. That is that's the only equation when you have a salary cap. How do you get the most amount of talent? That's it. That's the equation. So extra leftover cap space isn't going to help you, because guess how much talent you get for all that cap space that isn't spent? 0. So you take your sort of talent per dollars metric, multiply it by how many cap dollars you're spending. And pretty much every team is spending roughly the same amount, but I'm bringing that up because, again, everybody's looking at it, and to be fair, some people are looking at it from the standpoint of efficiency. The problem is they're not acknowledging that you have to spend the money. So you can say, we spend too much on Rashan, therefore we shouldn't pay Rashan. We spend too much on Jair, so we shouldn't pay Jair. We spend too much on Kenny, so we shouldn't pay Kenny. We should let Elton walk. He's not good enough. We don't need to pay. Let him walk. Well, you might be getting more efficient, but by not spending the money, you're making us a significantly worse team. Unless you can go out there and find somebody that you can pay that money to that is more efficient. And good luck doing that in a thing like free agency. Free agency is where you overspend. You want to know how you get efficient? Get young. Draft a lot of people and draft well. That's the best way. The second best way, homegrown talent. You don't have to necessarily pay for homegrown talent. You can pay them more or less what they're worth. But you start getting out into the market and competing with other teams, It's going to get overly expensive. That's why a lot of those teams who play a lot in free agency are not very good, because they're very inefficient in their spending of cap dollars. It's relatively straightforward, but if you don't believe me, just write it out on a piece of paper. Do a couple math problems. It's simple, multiplication. Find a way to prove me wrong on my formula. You can't, because it's very simple. And it's kind of with that thought in mind that I'm looking at Jair. And I look at it and I say, I don't know that, well, we certainly have not paid him the right amount of money in hindsight, but there's still a question of moving forward. What is his value and what are we paying him? Oh, shoot, we're overpaying him. The reason why I want him back despite that is because I don't see a scenario where we get rid of him and make the team better. I'm all for efficiency, but there's not a grocery store you can go to where you can get corners. Jair is 75 cents per ounce, and we'll trade that in and go get this for 71 cents per ounce. You do some... I love shopping online because the comparative shopping is so much easier, and sometimes they do the math for you. It'll show you like per ounce or something, per pound, per whatever, per pound, meat. They all kind of put that on the label, but price per ounce, Amazon, Walmart, when you shop online, they show you. It's like, heck yeah, dude. That's what being efficient is, right? It's not necessarily the total price that you're paying. Well, that's more expensive. No, not per ounce. It's not. You're getting more. Anyways, you can't just trade in Jair for a more efficient Jair. So you have to work within the constraints that you have. And what I want is the best possible team. And I want to be as efficient as possible. But right now, if we just start cutting everybody, I don't see the more efficient talent that's out there. Again, just as a height, let's say Jair is a 10 talent, arbitrary 10. And we spend $10 million. That's $1 million per talent for Jair. Can you find a guy that's 1.2 and spend that 10 there? Can you find like 2 or 3 different guys that are at like 1.4, 1.5 and go get them? Again, these are not real. I mean, you can make them real metrics. It wouldn't be that hard necessarily. In fact, I may do that because it's now that I'm doing this in my head, it's like, okay, we should probably just do it. Again, let me look on here. Because I know Over the Cap does it. I feel like I want to do it myself, though, because that's just... I can control the variables better when I'm doing it myself. Plus, if they're doing PFF grades, I don't think that's the best way. It needs to translate to value, But anyways, that's kind of where I'm at. You want to try to be efficient, but being efficient takes time. It's not easy to come across these highly efficient... I think that's what we got in Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney, to be honest. These are guys that we can have for a long time. We can give them these contracts. They get essentially cheaper over time because they're going to be here for a long time. Sky-high talent. I do not think we overpaid, which is very weird. You think you would especially overpay for young guys, but I don't think we did. But yeah, being efficient is difficult. You've got your draft picks, which is the best way to do it. And outside of that, you got homegrown. And that's the other thing. It's hard to be efficient if you want to cut all of our homegrown talent. Well, they're not good enough. Good enough for what? We didn't even give them the contract. You don't even know what the contract is. The point is we'd pay them what they're worth. You get rid of them and go get somebody else. It might be a better player, but it's going to cost more money. And there's only so much money to go around because we have a salary cap. So, might as well start with Jordan Love. I guess the idea here is, number one, just looking at the contract generally. Number two, what could possibly turn things sideways? And then I guess 3 would be, if it did go sideways, what's the exit strategy? Jordan Love makes sense insofar as it's at least been brought up. Let's say he has a bad year. What do you do? Well, we couldn't possibly get rid of him because we just paid him. Not necessarily. We paid him prior to last year, which means if he has a bad year this year, 2 years of his contract have been completed, 2024 and 2025. This is all, by the way, completely hypothetical, so please don't get mad at me. We're just talking about stuff. It's the off season. We got not a lot else to talk about. We might as well talk about it, all right? Got to be mature enough to handle these kinds of conversations. 2024 and 2025 are in the books. 2026 would be the year. Presumably it was terrible. We got a quarterback, all that stuff. Are we getting rid of Jordan in 2026? No. And it's not even necessarily because of his contract. I just think the Packers wouldn't do that. Year one, and I'm sure Jordan would be pissed and he would demand a trade, and maybe there would be a trade. I don't really know. But year one is, this guy's going to sit, Jordan's going to play. By 2027, we're going to, probably start thinking about moving on. at which point there would be a $33 million dead cap hit. Well, that's terrible. That's awful. Yeah, but he has a $44 million cap hit, which means we would actually save $10.5 million. That's just assuming a pre-June 1 we release him. Trade is the same amount of money. It's 33.5 dead, 10.5 in cap savings, probably get a decent return on a quarterback unless he just completely imploded, which I guess we're kind of assuming he did. Hopefully had a bit of a bounce back the following year. But if we're looking at taking action in 2027, if we were to trade Jordan Love, let's say, post-June 1st trade, whatever. In fact, not even post-June 1. Let's say not post-June 1. Let's make it even more strenuous and stressful on us. If the Packers were to trade Jordan Love in 2027, there would be a $51.7, call it $51.8 million dead cap hit. Now, that's not great. That's not fun. That doesn't feel good. But it's very doable. His cap hit is $42.4 million, which does mean we'd be paying more to not have him than to have him. But it's 1 year for about the amount of money we were going to be having for him on the cap anyways, plus whatever trade compensation we get for him, and he's off the books entirely by 2028. Now, if you spread that out, you end up saving, $11 million a year, and then you just got to pay like $15 the next year or something to that effect. Again, this is not fun to talk about. Obviously, Jordan being great is the best way to go about this situation, but I'm just saying, if it were to come to it, that's essentially the scenario. 2024 is done. 2025 happens and is a disaster. 2026, we draft a quarterback, and we have sort of that competition thing going on, and by 2027, potentially, you're looking to move on. Maybe not even. Probably, but maybe not even. Might as well move on to running backs, I guess. Josh Jacobs, the only one super worth talking about. Remember, this was a pretty team-friendly deal insofar as if we wanted to get out of it, we absolutely could. In fact, we could get out of it today if we wanted to. Wouldn't be great, but it wouldn't kill us if we did. Good thing is, we don't want to. And we can absolutely just keep him on the roster through 2027 when he's 29 years old and potentially looking for another contract. In fact, that would probably come up next year or the offseason of 2027 at the latest. But yeah, I think this is a contract we really don't need to worry about. Emmanuel Wilson, on the other hand, I mean, they keep stringing the guy along. I hope he has a great season. We'll see how it goes. But I think, well, he's 26 years old, and he's on a 1-year deal right now for $1 million. They obviously want Marshawn Lloyd to be that dude. I don't really know where we go with Emmanuel Wilson. We may need to just see how this plays out. But, I mean, it's one of those things where if he's really good, we can't keep him. We can't pay a third running back a ton of money. Only if he continues to fly under the radar and we just refuse to give him the amount of snaps that he probably should be getting. And there's almost no amount of, I guess because Marshawn Lloyd's on a rookie deal, it doesn't really matter. We could pay him a little bit more, but there's just not much that we can pay him where it's going to make a lot of sense. But we have Emmanuel Wilson for this year. It's looking pretty dicey, getting too far into the future, especially since he's on the list of players that, for whatever reason, in my mind, the Packers just really don't value anywhere near as much as I do and as much as the rest of the fan base seems to. But all right, why don't we take a break? We'll do the rest of the offense, take another break defense, see how that goes. We'll be right back. All right, on the other side of things, we've got the tight end duo of Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. Now, we'll probably save this for another day, which is how do we pay everybody? What does that look like? Kind of was contemplating that for today, but it's just not really how it's materializing, and we definitely don't have time for it. But suffice it to say, for right now, Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave will be in the final year of their contracts next year. So in the midst of all the who stays, who goes, we always talk about, Romeo and Christian and Jaden, I suppose, would have to be put in there. Tucker and Musgrave are in there as well. Tucker, obviously, is not really a question of if, but how much. Musgrave is more of an if. At wide receiver, Romeo and Christian Watson are in the final years of their deals. They are free agents starting in 2026. And so, I mean, under different circumstances, we could be talking about new contracts this year for either of them. That's definitely not going to happen I shouldn't say definitely. I would be very surprised if that happened for Christian Watson because the guy's injured. We're going to give you a new contract and you're not even going to be here this year. And, we don't know how this is going to shape out with our new receiver and all that. It's better to just wait. And with Romeo, I would be less hesitant if it wasn't for the little flare-up last year. I would say, again, if it wasn't for that incident that took place, I might be sitting here going, I wonder if they could get a deal done on a modest contract, because any way you slice it, it's nice to have him around. If you can pay him as sort of a number 3-ish type of guy, which I think he sort of is right now, whatever that amounts to, then it's worth talking about. But I think there's a question of potentially, I don't know exactly what happened, and I don't know how the Packers feel about what happened. But there is a potential situation where the Packers are going to want to wait and see and are kind of leaning toward wanting to replace him because, they don't want more incidents like this. And, so they certainly don't want to lock him up for multiple years. And so it's going to be wait and see. And I don't know how much information we can get for Christian other than it doesn't go very well for the rookies, in particular Golden. In which case, you're certainly going to want to hang on. I think you probably want to hang on either way, but, and that really just leaves Jaden Reed, who, is in the same boat with Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave and Dontavian Wicks. So that's, as far as the receivers go, I'm not doing too much hemming and hawing over it. Jaden Reed and Tucker Kraft are staying. Dontavian Wicks and Luke Musgrave have to prove that they deserve to stay. If they do so, they'll get paid to stay. But still, there are a lot of decisions to be made in the near future. And if certain people, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, and Luke Musgrave, can't earn a spot on this team, we've got some work to do. Look, if Jaden Reed and Matthew Golden and Tucker Kraft are the real deal, I'll get over it with the outside shot, obviously, of Savion Williams, and who knows what else we can add in the meantime, plus Josh Jacobs, potentially Marshawn Lloyd. There's still plenty to work with, but, that's a lot of no's that wouldn't be great. I suspect Christian Watson stays, but the injury issue is certainly an issue. And then on the offensive line, as far as final years, Zach Tom and Rasheed Walker. And when you look at it from that standpoint, you could maybe understand why they've been pushing the left tackle thing so much, because they maybe don't want to pay Rasheed big-time tackle money. It's a stupid reason, but it's kind of one of those things where I like Rasheed. I like Rasheed a lot. How much money is it going to cost to retain him? Now, I'll pay Zach Tom to the moon and back. That dude gets paid all day. Rasheed is a solid, not elite, solid pass blocker and terrible run blocker. We have to make a decision pretty rapidly whether or not we want to pay this guy. And so I have a feeling that Jordan Morgan and Anthony Belton will be given ample opportunity to prove that they get that spot. Because if they can't, the Packers are in a tough spot. They have to make a decision. Did we see enough from either Morgan or Belton or both to say, let's just roll the dice? Could they possibly give Rasheed a low contract and have him stay without having some other team outbid us for him? I simultaneously hate to think that the Packers would try to push out someone like Rasheed, but at the same time, when you look at how things are laid out, it's not even necessarily just the money. It's a question of, do we want to be locked into this level of production? Or can we find better? And we took two massive swings to see if we can find better. Sean Ryan is also a part of that, and simultaneously we have the same two guys that are competing for left tackle are also competing for right guard. I don't think Sean Ryan is going to get a big contract anywhere, so re-signing him wouldn't be a massive deal. But, if he is the future, it's still going to be somewhat cumbersome of a contract in terms of it's going to be, a 4-year contract or something, and it's going to be a couple years, and it's not going to be backup money. So I do think the Packers are going to push pretty hard to get them both out of the way and position them hopefully as backups. I think that'll be a lot easier to do with Sean Ryan than Rasheed Walker, but we'll see how it materializes. Again, Zach Tom just gets paid. That's just all there is to it. Only other person on the offense that probably should be considered here is Malik Willis. Malik Willis is also in the final year of his contract. So obviously I'm hoping that we don't see him much outside of the preseason. I hope he dominates in the preseason. We don't really see him at all except to maybe in a few blowouts he comes out and puts a little bit on tape. But there is a question of what do you do? They like Sean Clifford a lot. Do they like him as more than a clipboard holder? I don't know. Could we get anything for him? I don't know. I like to have a guy like Malik Willis just as a backup. I don't think it hurts anything. The guy's won his football games. I think that's incredibly valuable and probably more valuable than whatever mid-round pick he would get us, unless somebody out there that's really struggling at quarterback thinks that he could be the answer as a starting quarterback, in which case the compensation goes up. But we'll see. All right, let's take our final break. We'll rip through the defense and then kind of do a final overcap of where things are at here. Overcap? Recap? Overcap? What the heck is an overcap? Take a break. We'll be right back. All right, so as we move on to the defense, we get a little bit more into the hypotheticals and whatnot. As we look at the interior, it's not that we really have a ton of contracts coming up, at least not in the super immediate future, but there is a question of Kenny Clark. Kenny is 30 years old. He's going to be 31 next year in 2026, when it's going to be doable and almost preferable to get rid of him. His salary cap hit is going to jump from $20 to $31 million. Now, we all know there is no chance that anybody on God's green earth will pay him $31 million. Now, you could tweak the contract if you wanted to, but that would simply entail pushing money out, which doesn't really do you any good because in 2026 he's due $31 million, in 2027 he's due $27 million, which is still way too much. So what are you going to do? You're going to take that $31 million, put a bunch of money in his pocket to guarantee it, take $10 million off, which is still $21 million, and pump it into 2027? Otherwise, we're talking about giving him another extension. So I think we got to see how this year goes. And then in 2026, it's a question of, look, if you want to stay, it's a pay cut. Otherwise, this isn't going to work. But there's a kind of an additional problem here, and that kind of comes from the fact that not a lot of that money comes from his actual salary. There's an $11 million roster bonus just in 2026. $11 million roster bonus, $1 million per game bonus, not actually per game, but that's what it adds up to. $700,000 workout bonus, and then call it $10 million of that is coming from his prorated signing bonus, which is money that already went into his pocket. So the pay cut, he's only making $8.8 million. What are we going to do? Cut it down to $5 million? That's a $3 million, call it a $4 million pay cut. That's still, that gets us down to 27. That's too much money. We would have to cut his salary down to 0 in order for this to make sense for Kenny Clark. So I don't really know what you do here to have Kenny Clark on the team in 2026. We could play the void year game, but I mean, all that's going to do, and again, there's not a lot of money to play with, but that's going to take money from 2026, put it into 2028, which means we're probably going to be overpaying him in 2026, overpaying him in 2027, and then overpaying a Kenny Clark that's not even here in 2028. It just doesn't make any sense. So I don't know. I don't know every which way that you can twist a contract, but I don't see a scenario that makes a lot of sense other than in 2026 we move on from Kenny. It's not impossible with the low base salary that we can maybe get something for him. Possibly, I don't know. but it would be a $17 million dead cap hit, which would be $14.3 million in savings compared to the $31 million we would pay him to stay on the team. So it's $17 million to not have Kenny in 2026, and then obviously he's off the books in 2027 entirely. That's, as of right now, what makes the most sense. Devontae Wyatt, we picked up his fifth-year option, so he is not a free agent until 2027. Kind of inconvenient when you look at all the other 2027 guys that we'd have to look at, but it'll give us a good window of a couple of years to determine whether he ever hits that ceiling that we need him to or not. That goes for Lucas Van Ness as well, although he was a first-round pick, so we could pick up we could pick up his first-round option. Yeah. Am I saying that wrong? I'm getting tired. Fifth-year option, and it would get bumped out to 2028, so we still have a bit of a window there. The only other guys worth kind of talking about here, we have two free agents after this year, Brenton Cox and Kingsley Enagbare. We'll see about Kingsley. We'll see if anybody like Baron Sorrell pushes him out, if Lucas Van Ness can take a step. See what the scenario is with Rashan Gary in the super long term. If Brenton Cox can kind of take a step, if Colin Oliver is worth talking about, if Aaron Mosby is a part of this. Kingsley has become less and less relevant in my mind. He's fine, but I would say I would take Rashan, Van Ness, Brenton Cox, and Mosby certainly last year over Kingsley. Kingsley was bad last year, and I don't know if it's maybe the switch to a 4-3 or what, but it was really rough. And so if I had to guess, obviously we'll see what he can do this year if he takes a big step or if these other guys don't. It might be worth talking about, but I think either way, we have enough bodies to be able to move on and, if need be, go back into the well in the draft the next year. That would be my assumption. Brenton Cox is the one I'm kind of interested in here. I'm curious if he can kind of solidify his role a little bit more on this team. Otherwise, there's the question of Rashan Gary. Now, at this stage, I find it to be kind of absurd, but it is worth talking about if Rashan suffers another injury, if Rashan has another down year. When you look at the size of his contract, starting in 2025, last year was an $11 million cap hit. Really wasn't that big of a deal. This year, it's a $26 million cap hit. Certainly not, mega money for an edge rusher, but we need you to produce money. If he doesn't in 2025, it's certainly worth a discussion because in 2026, it's when it becomes feasible to move on. He'll be 29 years old. The $28 million cap hit, again, is really not brutal, although we have to look at other cap hits and how those are starting to materialize. But his dead cap hit, if we did decide to move on, and I'm just looking at a basic pre-June 1 cut, I don't think a trade makes any difference, so a pre-June trade, it would be a $17 million dead cap hit, so we would save $11 million to move on. So 2026 is when it becomes feasible. And then certainly by 2027, if there's still no momentum there, 30 years old, it's only an $8 million cap hit compared to 31 against the cap. So I don't see it as a massive thing. However, I do think it's kind of a big year for Rashan Gary to demonstrate, first of all, stay healthy, but also demonstrate you can be that number one. Because starting in 2026, you are pushing 30, and your cap hits, the cap numbers are going up quite a bit. And his salary, actually, starting in 2026, so you have the cap number up, but also a really high salary. So that's money that they just don't have to pay you, as opposed to, high cap hits, but we already paid you. This is actual cash that has not been paid out to you. $18 million cap hit in 2026 and 21 in 2027, which is why there would be such big savings if they decided not to move on. So I would say it's time for Rashan to get back to what he was, let's say 2-3 years ago. Any sort of stumbles or injuries, and there's going to have to be some discussion of, what are we going to do here? At linebacker, Quay Walker is officially a free agent next year. There's a lot of speculation that there is a contract coming for Quay. I would probably assume that that's true, but I don't really know. They seem to really like Quay Walker and feel that he's a good fit for the team. So we will see if that ends up materializing. Otherwise, not a whole lot going on. Edgerrin Cooper, Tyron Hopper, obviously going to be around for a while. Isaiah Simmons is just sort of a tryout guy. Isaiah McDuffie, he's got a little bit of time here. Not much to worry about. Cornerback is somewhat similar. Obviously, we have to figure out what's going on with Jair. We'll look at his contract in a minute. But Keyshawn Nixon, 2027. Carrington Valentine, 2027. So there's that big 2027 class. But also, I don't think either of these guys, Valentine is a part of the class. Keyshawn isn't. But it's a part of that group. Valentine is not, I don't think, ever going to get a massive contract, so I'm not super worried about it. Keyshawn in 2027 will be 30 years old. I don't think he gets another contract. If he does, it's not going to be a very big one. Nate Hobbs is 26 years old. He's not even a free agent until 2029. So we don't have to worry about that guy for a while. Unless he sucks, then we got to worry about when can we get rid of him, but we'll let that happen first. Now, Jair, it's not really even worth looking at because I would assume he's not going to come back on his current contract. It's going to be reworked. That may not be the case. But I don't even know if he's on the team, period. It seems to be moving in that direction, but it could start moving in the other direction. Obviously nothing has happened yet, but 28 years old this year, $24 million cap hit. Next year, $27 million, and that's his final year. There is 2027, and I think some of these might be that way too, but they're void years, so they don't actually count, even though in a snapshot I see 2027 and just kind of leave it at that. But 2026 is his final year here. It's another reason why it's not, it's whatever. You got to overpay him. It just means you don't give him another contract, but if you don't have another option, a pay cut certainly would be nice. And there is a lot of cash to work with. It's not like, one of these low cash things and we got to figure out what to do with the cap. So the only thing we can do is give him an extension, which we don't want to. $16 million is the cash he's due this year, $18 million next year. So we'll see if he ends up being willing to do that. There may be some a little bit more long-term security in exchange for some lower numbers. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Again, I don't want to dig too much because I don't know how this is going to look when he comes back. But, and then safety, everything's, very long-term. McKinney, 26. We just signed him last year. 2028 is his free agent year. And then we got a bunch of rookies and freaking Zane Anderson. And we know that guy's not going anywhere. It says free agent next year, no chance. They're never letting this guy go till the day they enshrine him in the Hall of Fame. So, as of right now, next year, who we've got to look at, Quay Walker, Brenton Cox, Kingsley, and Igbari are the only defensive players. It's a very small group of people. That doesn't mean decisions won't be made. There may be contract extensions or whatever, but as far as people that are going to leave if we don't re-sign them, that's it. And honestly, of that group, there's not a single person I would be massively heartbroken if they were gone, and if they do get paid, they're going to get paid a lot of money. None of them. Special teams, interestingly, both our punter and long snapper are free agents. Again, very similar situation. I do want Whalen to stay, but, whatever. Orzic, yeah, I don't know that I'm going to shed a ton of tears. Offense is where things get a little bit crowded. The official list of 2026 free agents includes Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker, Sean Ryan, Romeo Dobbs, Chris Brooks, the running back, Malik Willis, Sean Clifford, Ben Sims, Malik Heath, and Christian Watson. Now, some of them are going to be restricted free agents. Some of them are unrestricted. I don't think there's any mega contracts here outside of Zach Tom. I think Christian Watson's injury has kind of kept him out of that conversation. Rasheed Walker would be the next in line as far as potential big contracts. Or Romeo if he just frickin' goes off. But even then, I don't think he gets wide receiver 1 money. Rasheed would be the only one if he just has a dominant year and nobody else can take his job. But it's so unlikely. I think Zach Tom gets a mega contract. Everybody else, it's a matter of, Malik, here's a couple bucks, please be our backup. Rasheed, here's some backup money, take it or leave it. Sean Ryan, backup money, take it or leave it. Christian Watson, here's a short-term extension. Romeo, I don't know. And that's probably about it. And then again, we got a pretty big 2027 group to parse through as well. But similarly, I don't know how many mega contracts there are. I don't think Jaden Reed gets a mega contract. Wicks is not getting a mega contract. Tucker, I mean, they love Tucker. I don't know what the justification could possibly be to give him like top tight end money. There's no production there. Devontae Wyatt, if over the next couple of years he just pops off, could be in that conversation. Probably not. Same with Lucas Van Ness. But again, Van Ness, we'll see if there's a fifth-year option there. But yeah, I don't see a ton of reason to panic about there's so many guys. My panic would come from what if we end up, it's not even, that's, let me put it this way. I think some people are panicked about what if we get rid of these people. We can't. We have to be able to field a football team, and that's some of the other people where they want to get rid of everybody. Again, number one, you can't win football games with cap space. Doesn't make your team better, and you have to be able to field a team. You can't just say, well, screw Christian, let's get rid of Wicks, let's get rid of Musgrave, let's trade Malik and see what we can get for him. Let's let Emmanuel Wilson walk. Let's let Romeo walk. Let's let Rashid let's let Rashid go. Elton Jenkins could walk out the door. Rashan Gary's overpaid. He can go. Lucas Van Ness is a bust. He can go. Kenny's overpaid and old. He can go. Jair needs to go. Keyshawn after a year or so, he can go. You understand, we're not going to be able to replace all these people. If we do, there's going to be a handful of free agents, a couple of draft picks, and then like a bunch of undrafted free agents to fill those spots. Our team just gets way worse. I mean, just because you can identify things that you think are not great or possibly overpaid and then can say they should leave, I don't know that that's necessarily thinking super far into the future. It's very short-term thinking. I understand the frustration with people not living up to your expectations, but you have to be able to field a team. We need 53 guys that can go out there and play. And if you just kick somebody out the door because they're not good enough or Christian Watson's injured too much, okay, now what do you do? Who do you put in there? What's your solution? You're only getting 7-8 draft picks, and maybe one or two of them are going to be any good. So what are we doing here? But yeah, I think there's a couple. It feels overwhelming because there's so many people. I don't think it is when you really look at it. I think most of these people stay, almost all of them on pretty low contracts and probably relatively short term, which gives us opportunity to replace them over time so that when it happens, we can easily move off of that player. And that's it. That's the whole story. So, anywho, I'm going to leave it at that. Any questions or further clarification, please call in, or any thoughts on potential problems or solutions or whatever. Feel free to call into the call-in show and let me know. Otherwise, I will let you go. You guys have a good rest of your night. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.